Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's my women's 2025 Grand Slam prediction video, and I cannot wait to get into this one. Before we do, though, remember to hit that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. So, we're going to break this video down, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about my champion for each Grand Slam, my dark horse for each Grand Slam, and also an interesting storyline that I think might happen during that Grand Slam as well. Just for background as well, I'm going to only pick players that are outside the top 10 for my dark horses. Some of them are a bit cheeky because they're just outside the top 10, but they are still outside the top 10. And I don't want to pick players inside the top 10 because I don't feel like that warrants a dark horse pick. So let's get into the Australian Open then. So my storyline, and I'll start off with storyline, dark horse, then champion. My storyline is Naomi Osaka to make the second week of a Grand Slam for the first time, of course, in quite a while, and definitely since giving birth, of course, to her daughter. It was a comeback season in 2024, and it didn't go exactly according to plan, I'm sure, for her, but there were some positive signs from the season. She still has that incredible hitting ability, and now she just needs to find the right blend, I think, and the right team going forward. She's picked Patrick Mouratoglou, and despite some of the divisive, I'd say, thoughts and feelings around the French coach, I think he's clearly had a lot of success in the past, and we know that. And one of the players, of course, who he coached was Serena, and that's the most high-profile one, sorry, even. And Osaka's game is relatively similar to Serena. I mean, if you look down to the technique of the forehand, even there's a lot of similarities that you can paint between the two players, of course. And so it'll be interesting to see whether Patrick can just impart some of his wisdom onto Osaka and potentially also some of Serena's best practices and what worked for her. Of course, the game has moved along even in the short period of time since Serena retired. But in saying that, there will still be, of course, some incredible insight he can give. So I'm backing her to hopefully be fit and come into the season raring to go and start off strong by making a pretty good run at the Australian Open, so into the second week at least. My dark horse is Schneider. So the young lefty, she won a number of titles this year in 2024, 5 if I'm not mistaken. And she played some really inspired tennis, if I'm being honest. A really, really talented young player. And she's been a bit under the radar because the titles she's won haven't been Masters 1000 tournaments or Grand Slams. She hasn't done an Emma Raducanu winning the US Open, for example, in her first ever attempt. But she is building and building very nicely. And she's an all-court player. She doesn't have many huge gaping holes in her game. So she's going to be dangerous. And I think she's going to take that form from the back end of this year and translate that into a very impressive start to 2025. My champion is someone who I think a lot of people missed during the 2024 season, and that's Elena Rybakina. I haven't gone for a Sabalenka three-peat. I think that would be incredible. She was able to do it, and it's definitely possible. But, I always say, look, winning it twice in a row is very hard. Winning it 3 times in a row, even harder. And despite how good Sabalenka is, she had a phenomenal 2024, of course, winning 2 slams. But I do think it's asking a lot for her to then go on and win a third straight Australian Open title. It's not a bad pick. She may well go on to do it. But there's one player in particular she doesn't like facing, and that is Elena Rybakina. Now, Rybakina, of course, didn't have the best of seasons in terms of matches played and consistency throughout the year. However, one thing that she did have at her disposal was a positive team change, I think is fair to say. And whether that's positive in terms of results, we will see. But definitely in terms of her mindset, she seemed like she wasn't particularly happy in the way that she was playing, and well, not even just the way that she was playing, but just mainly how she felt on court. Now she's changed coaches and split with her previous coach, and she will be coached by Goran Ivanisevic, who had plenty of success with Novak Djokovic, winning 11 of his Grand Slams with the Serb. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how she gets on with him, because one of the biggest areas of improvement for Djokovic was his serve and volleys. And we know how good Rabakina's serve is already. So if he can take that to the next level, even imagine how much of a weapon that's going to be. Then if you add in the the additional tool of having being able to come to the net on a regular basis effectively and being able to finish off points and shorten points by coming forward. That's such a plus for someone like Rabakina, whose movement is definitely not elite by any means. I think she's definitely not a bad mover, but she's not as good, of course, as some of the other top players. I would say she's probably the worst mover out of Goff, Swiatek, and Sabalenka and herself. I think that's fair to say. So she needs, I think, that added layer to her game, and it will really help her, I think, longer term as well. She's tall, she's got a fantastic serve, she's got big booming ground strokes, but something that's missing, of course, is that little bit of added finesse, not just the volley game, but also the touch, the drop shot, things like that that she can definitely add to her game. We've seen Sabalenka, of course, incorporate it successfully this year and to really great success, I think, throughout the whole season. So I'm sure Rabakina will be wanting to do the same going forward, and I imagine Ivanisevic will definitely implement that into his tactics for the Kazakh going forward. But look, I mean, she's made a final of the Australian Open in the past in 2023. Her results at the Australian Open, apart from that, haven't been great, I have to say. A lot of second and third rounds, nothing beyond that, apart from that 2023 results. It hasn't been her most consistent slam. Her most consistent slam has been Wimbledon. She won it in 2022, quarterfinals in 23, and semi-final in 24. So, you know, there's an argument to be made that could she win that? You have to find out soon whether I'm going to pick her for that. But I do think with Ivanisevic in her corner, just a new lease of life, the positivity that I've seen from her, not just on court, but also, you know, also off court as well. If you look, she's looks, and social media isn't, of course, everything, but you don't really tend to see a lot of pictures of her smiling or just relaxing and looking like she was completely chilled out off court. I think we're seeing more of that. We're seeing more of her personality. She was a lot happier. And that, of course, is a really big plus. So I'm hoping that she continues to enjoy being on and off court. And that'll put her in good stead, I think, going forward, as long as she's able to stay fit, in my opinion. Roland Garros. Now, Roland Garros is always an interesting one because you would ordinarily just look at it and say, well, Swiatek, right? Swiatek, there's absolutely no way that she doesn't win it. Now, I talked about this in the WTA QualityShot Tennis Awards, and I do want to reiterate this point. I know that Yannick Sinner has handled the suspension and potential impending ban or further ban at some point in 2025 very, very well throughout the whole of this season. For Iga, though, if you look at when she first found out she was banned, she hasn't won anything since. Now, of course, that was a lot later than Sinner, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt. But at the same time, not everyone handles it in the same way. And I do get the feeling, and I could be wrong, that potentially she could take this maybe not more to heart, but this could potentially have more of an impact on her mentality, and her mental game is one of her biggest assets for Swiatek, in my opinion. If her mentality is hampered in any way, I don't think she'll win a slam this year. That's just the way I see it. And I do think it's difficult because I think Sinner is just abnormal, if I'm being honest, in the fact that he's been able to just completely brush it to one side and have a career best season with all the allegations in the background. I do think that Swiatek, with again some question marks around whether there may be an additional appeal, I do think it's going to affect her mentally. I do. To what degree remains to be seen, but I would imagine it's going to have some sort of effect. So I actually haven't gone for her to win it, spoiler alert. And that's my storyline. Iga loses for the first time at the French Open since 2021. That's my biggest storyline for Roland Garros. And then my second one is Maria Sakkari to make a Grand Slam semi-final at the French Open for the first time since the 2021 US Open. She's obviously not had a very good year, Maria Sakkari, I think it's fair to say. Hopefully she comes back after she's had an injury, comes back fit, strong, raring to go, motivated. Of course, she had a coaching change as well at some point this year. So let's see if she's able to really piece it together and start to make some waves again on the WTA tour, as you'd expect from her. My champion is Arina Sabalenka. And before that, even my dark horse, was Mira Andreeva. Now, the youngster had a really impressive Roland Garros this year, made the semi-finals of the French Open. And look, I mean, she is such a talented youngster. She's still so young. And she has so much more to do, of course, and so much room to improve still. But she does enough. I mean, she lost to Paolini in the semi-finals, but beat Sabalenka in the quarterfinals. She's a phenomenal player. She really is. At 17 years of age, and she only turns 18 April next year. So, yeah, I mean, she would be an 18-year-old at that Roland Garros, and I do think she'll make some waves. Whether she makes another semi-final or even potentially goes on to win it, who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised if she makes another deep run. But my champion, as I did mention, a bit of a spoiler alert there, is Arina Sabalenka. Now, I think if she were to lose the Australian Open, as I predicted, then I do think you'll light a fire under her to really capture the next one. And she's been, pretty close to Roland Garros in the sense that she hasn't made the final there yet, but she's made plenty of semi-finals. In fact, she's made one semi-final in 2023 and just the one quarterfinal in 2024. But I do get the feeling that it's just around the corner. The quarterfinal against Mira Andreeva, she didn't seem like she was well. The semi-final in 2023, she should have won that match. She was up, and Muchova kind of stole that match really from her. Sabalenka had it in her hands. And I'm not saying she would have beaten Iga, but I think it would have been a tougher final potentially, although Muchova put on a really impressive, resilient display against Swiatek in that final. Now, that was a big opportunity, of course, for Sabalenka. So my thinking is that she's going to get there at some point, because if you look at her other tournaments of the US Open, she made semi-final, runner-up, won. Australian Open, won, and then obviously won. Roland Garros, semi-finals, quarterfinals. Would it be runner-up? Would it be winner? I would imagine she'll go one step further, at least. But my prediction is she'll win. Now, whether that's having to beat Swiatek on the way or Swiatek gets upset by someone on the way, who knows? I'm not going to make that prediction. And of course, the draw will have a big bearing on my ultimate prediction anyway before the slams do start. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think Sabalenka's a very underrated clay court player. And if Swiatek isn't going to take the title, I would imagine Sabalenka will take it. So that's my pick. Right, for Wimbledon, I've got some interesting storylines here. Well, one. So I've gone for Ons Jabeur to make a run. So, of course, a two-time Wimbledon runner-up and She didn't have a great year this year. She's dropped out of the top 40, and her career high, of course, was number 2 in the world. Look, I mean, there's a few factors for that. Injury, of course, being one, definitely a lack of form or dip in form, and I think also mentally affected by some, you know, other world, let's say, affairs off court. And that's understandable. She's been one of the only vocal players about certain issues as well, which has been, in my opinion, quite disappointing, given the support for other causes. But one thing I will say is that she's too talented a player not to find some rhythm and form again. And if she's able to stay fit and play pretty much a full season, there's no reason why she cannot make another deep run at a slam. I'm not saying she'll win one, but she should get close at least and give herself a good opportunity. My dark horse is actually Emma Raducanu. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this, and a lot of people pick her because she's got talent. She won the US Open. She's young. It's a very popular pick, I would say, for a lot of people from what I've seen in the past. To think, yes, she's just going to replicate what she did at the US Open. Is going to click at some point. That's not really my thinking. My thinking is she's working with a new fitness coach who has coached a few very top players on the WTA tour. And my thinking is that she's going to be able to physically hold up a lot better because of this coach. And also, she's going to be able to also get a bit sturdier, I think, in her, not maybe just her physique, but her stronger in her play, in a level of play, more solid foundations in the way that she defends as well. I think that'll put in really good stead going forward. I think there have been some definite physical issues with her, of course, throughout her whole career, and that has not put her in a very good position at certain times, especially when she's actually been playing quite well. So my hope is that she'll be able to limit the injuries because of this. She'll also improve her conditioning generally and her fitness. And going forward, she's going to have some really decent runs. And of course, Wimbledon, apart from the US Open when she won it, has been her most consistent anyway. Slam 4th round in 2021, second in 2022, 2023 she didn't play, and 2024 she made the 4th round. So yeah, I mean, look, that 4th round loss against Lulu Sun definitely hurt her. You could tell, but also I think she was just happy to make the 4th round and start making some moves on the big stage again. So let's see how she gets on. But I'm hoping she makes some big waves again. My champion for Wimbledon, like Roland Garros, is Aryna Sabalenka. Now, she made the semi-finals of Wimbledon in 2021 and 2023. She didn't play the event in 2022 because of the Russian ban, Russian and Belarusian ban. And then 2024, this year, she pulled out just before the tournament because of a shoulder injury. She did the media days and everything, and clearly wanted to play it. I think she knew she'd have a very good chance, but it wasn't to be. Now, I think it's just a matter of time until she wins Wimbledon. If she doesn't win it in 2025, she will win it at some point, in my opinion. Her style of play is just so suited to the grass, and there's a reason that she had good success in 2021 and 2023. I just have a feeling that with her more consistent serving, her added variation into her game, the slice, the drop shot, also her net play, I think she's going to be even more dangerous on the grass. And I think she'll take the title in SW19. Apart from Rybakina and obviously maybe Jabeur as well, I think you can probably throw in Krejcikova because she's won it last year. Apart from maybe those three, I don't, and Sabalenka, so let's make it 4. There's not really any other players that I see as being really impressive grass court players. Swiatek's not one of them. Coco Gauff, I mean, still very unproven on grass. There's not really anyone else, if I'm being honest. We've had some very good players, of course, Paolini, Vekic, but they've only played really well at Wimbledon 1 year, so I don't think that's enough to really warrant saying that they deserve to kind of be in that conversation, in my opinion. On to the final Grand Slam of the year, the US Open. So my storyline is that one of two players who have had different types of success at the US Open. So Andreescu, she won the title, of course, a few years back, and Leylah Fernandez, who made the final when she lost to Raducanu in 2021. One of those two will make the second week of the US Open, and they'll finally make another deep run at a slam, and they'll pick up some momentum. I hope that's the case anyway. My dark horse is Paula Badosa. Now, Badosa has had a very impressive 2024. She made the quarterfinals of the US Open, and I do think that she'll kick on in 2025 as long as she is fit and healthy. So that's my dark horse. My champion is Coco Gauff. I think she's going to win it for a second time, her second Grand Slam. She won the US Open, of course, in 2023, beating Aryna Sabalenka in the final, and I think she'll win it again. I just think she has an affinity to the US Open, and I have a feeling if she's going to win one, despite being so consistent at Roland Garros, I think it might be the US Open next year. So this would, given my predictions, be the first year since 2022 that Iga Swiatek wouldn't win a slam. It's a massive call by me, I'm going to be honest. And, it's a big call to not pick her for Roland Garros. It's just my early, I guess, gut feeling. But let's see what happens when the draws come around. Let me know your predictions in the comments below, who you've picked for your champions, dark horses, and storylines of the Grand Slams for 2025 for the Women's Tour. Thanks very much, guys. Stay safe and well. We'll see you on the next video.